Hi, I'm Melissa Mortenson from Polka Dot Chair, and I am here in the Fat Quarter Shop Studios today to show you how to make the Ohio Star block that is featured on our Let's Stay Home row along. The Ohio Star block is the third row and the fifth row of the quilt, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make it. It's a standard Ohio Star block. If you've made them before, you might be familiar with it, but just in case you've never done it before, I'll go ahead and walk you through it step by step. The Ohio Star block features 4 quarter square triangle blocks, and they're called that because it's a square that's been cut into 4 pieces, so it's a quarter square triangle. There's lots of different ways to make quarter square triangles. I like to make them starting first with half square triangles, and I make mine a little bit bigger so that I can trim them down to size, to the exact size, because you need to be accurate with your seams. And I find sometimes you can always cut fabric off, but you can't add it back on if you do it the wrong way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by making the quarter square triangle blocks first. You are going to start with 4 pieces of fabric. Background fabric, which is white. You have the fabric A, which is what I call, on the Ohio Star block, I call these, just because I don't know, I call these star points. I don't know if that's what they're supposed to be called, but it's just what I call them. So whatever fabric's going to be on your star points, you need 2 of those squares. And then you need 1 square of what the 4th fabric is on that quarter square triangle. So what you're going to do is you're going to pair 1 of the fabric A with your background and 1 of fabric A with fabric B. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to take a ruler and some sort of pen, and you're just going to like draw a line down the diagonal of your blocks. Okay, so here's these. These have the diagonal line drawn on them. And then what I did is I took it to my sewing machine, and I know on my sewing machine where the 1/4 inch spot is. So then I've just stitched down a 1/4 inch on each side of that line that I drew. If I'm making a whole bunch of blocks at a time, I will mark them all and stack them up, and then it's called chain piecing. You can just like stitch it, and then without even like clipping your thread, put the next one down, and you can just go through and you can really fast knock out a whole bunch of these blocks. After you've stitched on both sides, we are going to come and we're going to use a ruler, and we're just going to cut right there along that line, and we need to do it for both pieces. Okay, after you cut your pieces, your squares apart on the diagonal, you need to press the pieces. Normally when I press half square triangles, I press towards the lighter fabric, but to get the seams to nest together the right way, I'm going to press towards whichever fabric I used twice. So in this case, it was the blue, that kind of lavender dog. So I'm going to take all 4 pieces, just start with a couple at a time, pull my iron over, and just going to just secure that seam really fast, and then I flip it up. And you're working on the bias, so just be careful just to only go up and down. So super fast. I'm gonna go in, and all 4 pieces I'm gonna press. So to make sure that I'm pressing towards the right way, I just know I have that fabric with the blue fabric with the dogs on top. So that when I fold it back, I just know the seam's going towards that part of the fabric. Okay, you've got pieces that look like this, and you're gonna pair them up. And for a while, it took me a while to figure out how to do this, and then all you need to remember is you wanna make sure that the fabrics that are the same are not on top of each other. So you're just gonna rotate this, you're gonna pin these right sides together so that the dog fabrics are not on the same side. And I like to come in with my fingers, and I just kind of nest those into each other. And then sometimes I pin, sometimes I don't. It's up to you if you want to pin. Just kind of keep that close to each other, and then we're just going to come in and we're going to draw a diagonal line. It doesn't matter which side of your fabric you draw it on. I usually just do whatever is lighter because you can see it easier. And you're going to just draw a diagonal line down your fabric. And you're going to do that for all 4 pieces. So you'll have 2 things to sew, just like this. And then, so I've got my pieces here that I have drawn the line and I have sewn. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, as I'm going to cut the pieces apart along that line. Okay, and then we're going to come back over and we're going to press again. I usually hit it once, flip it up, press. Then you need to trim these pieces down to size because they need to be 4.5 inches square, but right now they are bigger than 4.5 inches square. So I've got a couple of pieces I've already pressed. So I like to use a rotating cutting mat for this part, and then I like to use the block lock rulers because it's got the seam down the middle to kind of nest with that. It works better on a half square triangle, but they work pretty good for the quarter square triangles. And you're just going to get that set on there, and then we're just going to come in and go around all 4 sides. So then you know you have like a square that's exactly the right size that you need. So when you're done with that, I didn't trim all of them, you'll end up with 4 pieces that look like this. These are trimmed, these aren't trimmed. So I have some extra pieces that are already trimmed, and I'm going to show you how to lay the block out. So you've got your fabric that's going to be your center fabric. And on some of the quilts, I have fussy cut this fabric. On some of the rows, there's a little house that I cut the house out so that you could see the house right in the center of that. And so I like to just, before I start sewing, I like to just lay out the block so I know I've got all the right pieces in the right spot, facing the right direction. So you've got that. And then we've got our 4 corner pieces. And then when I stitch this together, I will go in and I'll stitch row 1, then row 2 and row 3, and if I'm making a whole bunch of blocks, I'll stitch all the row 1 left sides, and then do all the row 1 right sides, so I can kind of chain piece it and get it going through pretty fast. So you're going to stitch all those together, and then you're going to go ahead and just stitch the rows to each other, and I'll show you on my completed block how that looks from the back. So then you can see on the back how that looks, and then as far as pressing goes, I like to press the fabric that has like the least amount of seams in it out. So with this case, since there's all these seams, I just press this so that this isn't like folded in, because then that's just gonna like be another fold on the block. So if you press it so that the quarter square triangles, like their seams lay flat, then as you pin your rows together in your block, you know that they're gonna line up just right. So I did that. So you're going to keep stitching until you've made 10 Ohio store blocks that are large size. And then in the quilt, there's also a smaller size Ohio store block that is in row 4. Those blocks are constructed the exact same way, they're just a smaller size. So after you've done sewing all your Ohio star blocks, then we're going to go ahead and move on and show you how to assemble that center row of the quilt.